Hello and welcome. What we're going to be looking at today's lesson is technology, industrial growth, and big business in the post-Reconstruction era. Students will be able to, at the end of this presentation, examine causes and consequences of the Second Industrial Revolution, determine how new industry, technology, and business changed the economy, and identify significant inventors of the Industrial Revolution. Terms to know: entrepreneur, protective tariff, laissez-faire, patent, Thomas Edison, and the Bessemer process. So when we look at the United States and its push into its own industrial revolution, one of the things that we've got to understand that kind of makes it different than a lot of European countries is that the United States is really, really big, and we have a lot of natural resources that are available to us without ever having to leave our borders. So when we look at like Great Britain has to expand into the colonial power that it is in order for it to ever really engage in the Industrial Revolution, because the UK being such a tiny island, they really don't have any natural resources that they have available to them on a huge scale. And in order for the Industrial Revolution to work, really, you have to have a lot of goods, and you have to be able to use those resources effectively in order to be able to make a lot of products, which is really what the Industrial Revolution is about. So when you look at the United States, we've got a lot of coal, which is used to really drive the factories, drive the railroads and things like that. We've got a lot of lumber that can be used in order to be able to make finished products. We've got rivers that we can use to be able to transport those goods all around the country. And we've got lots of oil, which is something that, really at the turn of the century becomes a really, really huge deal. The United States also had the benefit of a labor increase. When you look at what's going on in the rest of the world, especially in Europe, and especially in Ireland, there are a lot of crop issues, there are a lot of religious issues that are going on, and that pushes a lot of people towards the United States because there are jobs, there's a lot of opportunity, and things like that that don't necessarily exist where these individuals are from. And this is where we see, kind of that first, especially 1880s, that first real big immigration boom, and then we see another huge immigration boom in the 1920s. So as all of this is going on, the United States really develops a capitalist system, which is based upon the free market. So the way that this works, it's largely built upon a book written by Adam Smith called Wealth of Nations, in which he describes what he refers to as the invisible hand. And this is the idea that businesses will sell what people want, or they will fail. So if I open up a pizza place that only sells pepperoni and anchovy pizza, the likelihood that that pizza place stays open for any amount of time is probably not very high, because people don't want to buy pepperoni and anchovy pizza. And in a capitalist society, if people are unwilling to buy what you are selling, then your business is going to fail. So businesses operated under this idea of a laissez-faire system, one in which businesses could operate with minimal government regulation, and that they'll be successful as long as they sell the things that the people want. Entrepreneurs, or people who invest money in a product or enterprise in order to make a profit, were those that benefited the most from this economic system, because they would invest money in businesses or ideas that they thought were good, and if those businesses took off, they had the ability to make a lot of money. Entrepreneurs were protected by the government through what were known as protective tariffs. And what these protective tariffs did is they made it more expensive to import goods from outside countries. So if the outside countries had to pay a tariff in order to bring their goods in, that means that they had to sell their good at a higher rate, which means that most of the time it became cheaper in order to buy a domestic good or a good made in the United States. So we look at our standard checks. What elements existed in the United States in order to make the Industrial Revolution possible? Using information from the previous two slides, we should be able to answer that question at this point. All right, so when we look at innovation, this is a time period that's filled with a lot of different invention, a really huge changes in the way that the American lifestyle existed. Thomas Edison was one of the most prolific inventors of the time. Edison patented over 1,000 patents, including the light bulb. And it's a lot of things that go along with that. He creates a lot of really amazing products. In 1844, we've got Samuel Morse, who perfected the telegraph. And if you'll notice the last name, Morse, telegraph, we get Morse code out of that. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell patented the first telephone. And if you actually Google Alexander Graham Bell's voice over phone, we've actually got recordings of what his voice sounded like as he made that first telephone call, which is pretty cool. So from 1876 to 1900, you end up with more than 1 million telephones in the United States. And in 1896, we've got Guglielmo Marconi, who invented the wireless telegraph, which is really important because we've got a really early concept of wireless technology. And then we've got in the 1850s Henry Bessemer, who developed a process for purifying iron. This resulted in a strong and lightweight metal known as steel. The process in order to make steel is known as the Bessemer process. And what we have to understand about this is a super important concept, because without the Bessemer process, we don't have the buildings that we have today. We don't have the infrastructure that we have today. We don't have cities like New York City or Chicago who are largely built based upon this new technology. So when we look at the inventions that are created during this time period, they really start to see the things and the groundwork for what shapes and builds modern American society. Then we've got our standards checks. At this point, we should be able to answer what type of inventions were created during this time period and how we have seen inventions change American society.